My thieving sister-in-law stole my family heirloom earrings, then assaulted me, so I had her arrested and pressed charges. My entire family sided with her, and my brother started fabricating evidence to try prove that she was innocent. My brother and sister-in-law had come over to visit my parents, and during dinner I confronted my SIL about how she stole from me. I asked her where my great-grandmother's earrings were, and took out the security camera that I kept in my room. I played the footage, which showed her sneaking into my room and going through my drawers, then taking them. My brother was the first to respond that she did it for a good cause. I asked what this cause was, and she said she pawned them so they could have more money for the wedding. I instantly lost it. I called her a thieving bitch and told my parents, who were staying silent, to call the cops as I'm pressing charges. "Oh no, you're not," my sister-in-law responded, before walking over and slapping me. She then started pulling my hair and screaming. She even picked up a glass and smashed it over my head, causing red to start pouring out of me. While this was happening, I saw my mother in the living room dialing 911. The police arrived quickly, and when they saw my wounds, they asked what was going on. I started explaining to the police what had happened, but my sister-in-law was saying everything she could to stop them from doing so. This got the cops suspicious, and they asked to see the footage. When they saw it, they didn't need much more convincing. Emily was arrested right then and there in front of the entire family. I was sort of satisfied. You see, Emily was the kind of person who would do anything to be the center of attention, especially when it came to celebrations. She had this obsession with always wanting everything to be bigger, better, and more extravagant than anyone else's. In her mind, she was like some kind of modern-day Daisy Buchanan from The Great Gatsby, floating around in luxury and hosting these jaw-dropping events where she was the star. But Emily didn't have the money to support her fantasies. She and my brother David were constantly living beyond their means. When she was planning the reception, she talked about it as if it were the biggest event of the year. She was determined to have the most stunning venue, the most expensive flowers, and the best catering no matter the cost. She was known to max out credit cards, take out loans, and do anything to satisfy that desire for validation. And even though David knew they were drowning in debt, he still enabled her fantasies. David had always been the type to make poor choices when it came to women. His relationships were consistently with girls who cared more about material possessions over meaningful connections, and he had a habit of chasing after women who seemed perfect on the surface but were hollow underneath. Emily was no different. She had charm, but her fixation on luxury and status was obvious even before they got married. David saw it too, but he chose to ignore it. He had convinced himself that Emily's need for material things wasn't as bad as it seemed. David never believed he could do better than her. Emily's constant obsession with her appearance was everything David had fallen for before, yet he still went through with the proposal. I assumed he thought that maybe this time would be different. David's fear of being alone or not finding someone better pushed him to overlook the flaws that everyone else could see. So when Emily sold the earrings and got arrested after our fight, David reacted exactly as expected. That very night, he bailed her out of jail without hesitation. It didn't matter to him that Emily had betrayed the family's trust. David's loyalty to her was solid, so much so that he had convinced himself that she wasn't in the wrong. David came to me later that night, furious. He accused me of overreacting, said I was blowing everything out of proportion, and told me that the earrings weren't worth much anyway. He said Emily was desperate because they needed money for their wedding reception, and it wasn't a big deal since she was now part of the family. He said she had every right to have those earrings as we did. I lost it. I told him that the earrings weren't about the money, they were about family. I was heartbroken that my own brother couldn't see why this hurt me so much. On top of that, she assaulted me, and she's lucky I'm only pressing charges for the theft, and not for that too. Instead of understanding, however, he started spinning the situation in his favor, telling the family I was being dramatic, that I'd always been jealous of Emily, and that I was just trying to start drama. He even had the nerve to tell some of our extended family that I had given Emily the earrings as a wedding gift. My parents, who had been so supportive at the beginning, started to question everything. David has always been the golden child since he was the youngest sibling, so it wasn't hard for him to twist their perception of me. He played the loyal husband card, saying he was just standing up for his wife. A few days later, my phone rang, and I saw it was my mom. I almost didn't pick up. I knew exactly what was coming, but I did. I could hear the exhaustion in her voice the second she started talking. First, there was that hesitant small talk, the kind where you can tell they're just trying to find the right moment to bring up the real reason for the call. Finally, she got to it and told me she had talked to David and that he had told her the truth. She said it was really disappointing to hear, and the situation upset all of them. I didn't say anything, just let her talk. I knew David had gotten to her. I could already tell from the tone of her voice that she believed him, or at least enough of his side to think I had some responsibility in all of this. She kept going, saying how the whole situation had gotten out of hand, and then she told me that I should apologize to Emily. She said if we talked things through, it could help heal the family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Apologize to Emily for getting slapped and having a glass broken over me after I confronted her for stealing from me, for her selling our family heirloom? My chest tightened as I realized what this was really about. My mom wasn't thinking about me. She was thinking about how all of this looked. She was was more worried about smoothing things over than about what actually happened. I hung up the phone. Soon enough, half the family was taking his side while the other half stood by me. I couldn't believe it. My own family was turning against me, all because of my brother's lies. I was heartbroken. So I decided to press charges against Emily. I wasn't going to let her walk away scot-free. If my brother wanted to protect his wife at all costs, fine. But I wasn't about to let them gaslight me into thinking I was wrong. It was theft, plain and simple. David wasted no time in twisting the situation to protect Emily. The moment I pressed charges, he began telling anyone who would listen that I was only after the money, and that I had blown the whole thing out of proportion because I was jealous of Emily. According to him, I'd always been jealous of her, of their relationship, and that's why I was making a big deal out of a pair of earrings. I heard through the family grapevine that he'd been calling up relatives and told them that I got Emily put in jail because I couldn't fathom my younger brother marrying someone as good as Emily since I hadn't met my person yet. He painted me as some kind of greedy, vengeful sister who couldn't stand to see him happy. It didn't take long for people to start believing his lies. Suddenly, family members who had been supportive started questioning me, asking if maybe I was being too harsh and if pressing charges was really necessary. I knew I couldn't face this legal battle alone, so I hired a lawyer. I thought the evidence would be straightforward, especially with the security footage and the undeniable fact that the earrings had been sold. But I underestimated just how far David would go to protect his wife. As soon as the legal process began, David started working to sabotage me. My lawyer informed me that David had gone a step further. He was bribing people, trying to get them to testify against me. He paid off a couple of distant family members to say that they had heard me say I didn't care about the earrings, and that I had casually handed them over to Emily as a gift for her wedding. It was a complete lie, but the sheer audacity of it left me reeling. He did everything in his power to discredit me. The people he bribed were willing to go on record and speak false testimonies that threatened to weaken my entire case. It didn't take long for my lawyer to pick up on the fact that something wasn't right. The worst came when David submitted supposed evidence to the court and fabricated text messages between me and Emily. My lawyer showed me the screenshots, and I felt my stomach drop. They looked like something I might have actually sent. In the messages, it seemed like I was telling Emily she could borrow the earrings whenever she wanted. One of the texts even went as far as to say, "You can keep them if you like." I had no idea how David had managed to create something like this, but it was clear he was going to stop at nothing to protect Emily. But it didn't stop there. My lawyer managed to track down one of the relatives who came to testify, and they admitted, off the record, that David had pressured them to lie. He'd paid them to say that I didn't care about the earrings, that I had practically handed them over to Emily without a second thought. It wasn't just about winning the legal battle for David. It was about making me out to be the villain. Every new jab David threw reminded me that my brother would rather see me fail than admit that his wife had done something wrong. On the day of the trial, the air felt thick. I entered the courtroom knowing this was the moment when everything would come to light. My lawyer presented our case. He showed the security footage of Emily sneaking into the room, the documents proving the sale of the earrings, and all the evidence of her theft. But then, as the witnesses were called to the stand, David's plan began to unravel. The first witness was a distant cousin. Under the pressure of cross-examination, the cousin's shaky confidence gave way, and he admitted that David had paid him to tell the false story. The courtroom shifted, and tension built up as our cousin's confession exposed David's. Next came a family friend, who also confessed to being bribed by David. Each testimony chipped away at the narrative David had tried to create. These were people he had trusted to lie for him, but under oath, they couldn't keep up the facade. The real blow came when my lawyer presented the fabricated evidence, text messages David had created to make it look like I had given Emily the earrings. Expert testimony confirmed they had been digitally altered, solidifying that David had tried to deceive the court. The judge was appalled by the extent of David's lies and ordered his arrest for fabricating evidence and bribing witnesses. David was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. His desperate attempts to control the situation had collapsed entirely. Now left to face the consequences alone, Emily was convicted of theft. The evidence against her was undeniable. The security footage and sales records sealed her fate. The judge awarded me the full value of the earrings, along with part of the inheritance my brother and parents had tried to keep hidden from me. Apparently, there had been more money left to me by my grandmother, but David and my parents had decided to manage it without telling me. There was a small trust fund meant for me, but instead of being transparent, my family kept it from me. David, being the more responsible one in their eyes, had been managing it, or more accurately, blowing through it. He'd used part of it for his own expenses, and hid the rest, figuring I'd never notice. That was the final blow. My parents, who had taken David and Emily's side, had to face the fact that they had been backing the wrong people. Walking out of that courtroom and seeing my mom's face absolutely wrecked me. For months, she'd been the one trying to keep everything together. When Emily went to jail after the fight, my mom was more worried about saving face than anything else. But seeing her now, after David got arrested for everything he'd done, hit me hard. She looked like she'd been gutted. She'd been holding on to this hope that things could go back to normal. But now, with David being led away in handcuffs, she was staring down the fact that her son was actually going to prison. I couldn't help but feel bad for her. Once the legal dust settled, the trust was finally transferred over to me. At first, it felt weird, like the money was tainted by everything that had happened. But after all the chaos, I knew I needed to get away. So I used part of that inheritance to get as far away from it all as possible. I booked a vacation to the Cayman Islands. I figured if I was going to use this money for anything, it might as well be to find some peace for myself. The Cayman Islands was as far away from the mess as I could possibly get. I found it ironic that the same inheritance that David tried to keep from me was being used as my vacation money while he was going to spend years in a cell. Once I arrived, it was like I could finally exhale. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't constantly thinking about the trial or my broken family. It was just me, the ocean, and a chance to finally process everything that had happened. I swam, I read, I laid in the sun, and for a little while, it was just about me. Now David is in prison, Emily's reputation is in ruins, and my relationship with my family is complicated. I've cut ties with my brother completely. My parents are trying to make amends, but it's hard to forgive them for how they treated me during this whole ordeal.